try that now. There we go. That should work a little better. All right, just to let you guys know, I'm not going on camera. I'm not getting all prettied up for this because it is my day off and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to sit around in PJs and do absolutely nothing. So, yeah, I just don't feel like going on camera today. You guys don't care. You guys know what I look like, and I'm not a narcissist like Amber Heard, so I don't care. So, as you guguys may know, I had published to the Academia EDU, which is an open source, that I want. Well, let me give you a backstory. So a long time ago, I got with Dr. S.A. Malik, who I informally reviewed one of his papers, which was defining atheism and the burden of proof, which I really liked. I really liked that paper, and so I did a critique on it, like I do critiques, here on YouTube. And he actually saw it and he liked it, and we've been friends ever since. And so he kind of challenged me. He's like, I've read your work. Why don't you actually write a paper? And I said, well, okay. And I wrote the paper, refuting the presumption of atheism by way of semantic square of opposition. And it kind of just flowed for me. It's kind of like, I can't say it was really that difficult to write that paper because it just was everything that I've been thinking of, but I just wanted to formalize it. So once I came up with a way of formalizing it using Dr. Demi's work, I was like, oh, this isn't, this is actually flowing pretty well. This is actually pretty cool. And so I can't say that writing the paper was exceptionally hard. Proofing it was the most difficult part, because errors creep in, typos creep in. So, I had a lot of edits. I probably had like 150 edits. But once I felt confident enough that it had no longer any errors, any logical errors, anything like that, and enough people had read it and gave me feedback on it, then I uploaded it to Academic EDU because I really had to think about it. I'm like, look, I'm not an academic. I have no need to actually publish in a journal, which can cost several thousands of dollars, which I'm just not going to spend for that. I don't have the vanity for that. Now, if I was working on a degree, master's degree, or some kind of program, then I may have. And by the way, why is it not showing my chat on here? Oh, here we go. Let me try that. I think I have to turn the chat box on. Type something and see if it comes up now. It should. And so I was like, I asked Dr. Malik, I was like, hey, and by the way, he had it proofread by 5 PhDs in philosophy and logic. And one of them actually said, he good job to the author. He really liked it. So I was pretty confident that it was correct. And I asked Dr. Malik, said, hey, how do I get this in the public domain without, formally publishing and getting a DOI and all that number, which, by the way, you don't have to actually have a peer review for a DOI number, but there you go. Now my chat box is working. I had to turn it on. And he said, well, why don't you just put it up on Academic EDU? That way people can read it and draw from it and, give you feedback on it. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's a good idea. And so I did that. I just put it in the public domain because, again, it's about the work. It's about people being able to read it and see if they agree with it or not. And so far, the reception has been overwhelming. It's only been out 24 hours, so to speak. What is it, 22? Maybe a day and a half. I don't know what it is. But it already has like 350 views already. And it's the top 1% of all papers read on Academia EDU for the month, which just means that for the month, people read papers. This one's been read by more people than usual, right? And there's obviously a reason for that because I've been putting it everywhere. I promote it on my Facebook, I put it on Twitter, and I know a lot of people. So yeah, it's going to get promoted. And people are going to be interested in it because I've been talking about it for a long time, right? So it's not surprising that it has a lot of views, although 350 is quite a bit. Most papers on that site generally only get, about 100 or so. And then, Dr. Malik's paper, I think he got 1,200 views or something like that. So, getting 350 views in one day is pretty important. So I did put this, out there in various groups. Hey, if you think you refute it, go for it kind of stuff, right? Well, I want to go over some of the refutations that people have had of the paper, all right? I can tell you right now, none of them succeeded. I don't know if you just want to turn it off now. That's the end of the story. None of them refuted my paper, which is not surprising, but one of them did write a blog on it. I'm going to go over that and detail on that. But let me just kind of give you an idea of there was a couple of these. I only took my favorite one. This was, I think, I had to think about this one. This one was like the hardest refutation I had to think of. This one was tough for me. So, I don't know. I had to really think, man, did I mess up? Did I screw my paper up? because this guy was brilliant. He must have read my paper. I mean, clearly he read my paper. And he says, can't back up Sky Daddy claims. Atheist this, atheist that. Why didn't I think about that when I wrote my paper? I mean, that man. So right there and there, I had to reconsider some of my work, but I kind of thought about it and said, yeah, no, I don't think this really refutes my paper, because why? Yeah, my paper has absolutely nothing to do with God existing or not. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm not a theist, so I don't. This is one of those. Hey, can you say that you didn't read my paper without saying you didn't read my paper? Right. This is not even a matter of did you not understand my paper? Did you attempt to read it? This is somebody who clearly didn't read it. But this is the extent of most of the feedback I've gotten from the Facebook groups. Right. Other ones are just quoting Hitchens and things of that nature. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, none of you people are who I'm going to take seriously. But this is the state of new atheism TM nowadays, right? This is what I keep telling people about. Look, these people are not on any intellectual level to have any kind of civil dialogue. All they know how to do is post memes and think they've made some brilliant refutation. So, all right. But, there's a couple other ones I wanted to talk about. There's this right here. Now, this was in a group, and I asked the guy if I could make it public. He said yes. We'll call him Joe. And I was like, Joe, it would take me an hour to go through this and find all the mistakes you made. There's just so much wrongness of this that it's not even wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, there's just no comprehension of this to me. It's just incoherent. But I said I would kind of go through it a little bit. I don't want to spend an hour on it because it's just not worth it. But just to show you some of the problems with something like this. So he writes, you assert that Gnostic theism is a rejection of a claim and ignore that Gnostic theism makes the claim. I don't even know what that parses out as. One, I make no mention of Gnostic theism because I think that's an incoherent term. It is ambiguous. It is logically ambiguous. I cannot find a single solitary reference in any academic journal or paper that has a coherent system using those types of phraseologies. When you juxtapose Gnostic with theism, I think you don't know anything about epistemology, because those two words do not go together. What are you being Gnostic about? Are you saying that you know? I mean, the only coherent way I could say it would be somebody who knows that God exists. Okay, although he seems to be making it as a belief that God exists, which is confusing. But again, because it's ambiguous. But my paper has nothing to do with knowledge at all. I'm not making any claims about knowledge. It's completely in the Dostastic domain. So he says, you assert that Gnostic theism, which I don't, so that's a mistake there, is a rejection of a claim. Well, it is theism is a rejection of a claim, right? Theism is a rejection of the proposition of atheism. So theism is a rejection of a claim. And ignore that Gnostic theism makes a claim. Well, yeah, theism makes a claim. Again, I don't know what the hell Gnostic means there, but theist makes a claim. Atheists make a claim. They both have two coexistential opposites of a claim. So for every P, there's a not P. So God exists, that's a claim. God does not exist, that's a claim. Theists assert God exists. Atheists assert that God does not exist. This is, again, normative usages in philosophy. If you want to use the different usages, knock yourself out. But my paper explains why using those usages will lead to a semantic collapse. That's the whole point of the paper, right? But this is how it's typically understood in academia. Then let me blow this up real quick. Yeah. Here we go. Then you use that false definition. How can a definition be false? Either definition describes or it does not describe. I can define anything as I want if it's describing something, right? I mean, I can say, a square has four sides. Yes, a square has four sides because a four-sided object is a description of a square. But are all four-sided objects squares? No, right? I'd have to get a little bit more specific and say, a square is a four-sided object with two parallel sides on top, bottom, right, left, and 490-degree angles, things of that nature, right? So if you're not talking about the internal angles, if you're not talking about the parallel of the sides, you're not describing the sufficiency conditions for a rectangle, or sorry, for a square. But if I just say a four-sided object, that still describes a square. So if I say square is a four-sided object, that's not false, but it's insufficient to prescribe what a square would be, right? This is why all these descriptions, all these definitions are just describing things. They don't prescribe what it is. Now, there are mathematical descriptions, and in math, some things are mathematically prescribed. Like what a square is, I would consider that to be more prescriptive, right? But as far as, the descriptive aspect of it, yeah, atheism is described both as the belief that God does not exist and the lack of belief that God does not exist. That's fine. But theism is also described as the belief that God exists and the non-belief that God does not exist, or the lack of belief that God does not exist. Those are the same thing as far as descriptions, right? I mean, nobody in the right mind should say those are false, right? Think about this. Theism, the belief that God exists and the lack of belief that God does not exist. That is a description of a theist, correct? I don't know why anybody would say no on that. An atheist, a description, a person who believes God does not exist and lacks the belief that God exists. Right? That describes an atheist. But one could argue that merely lacking a belief is not sufficient, because in philosophy, it's the sufficiency. See, I'm still working on my coffee. The sufficiency condition, there we go, is the actual belief, right? So it's usually understood in philosophy that you need to have that positive epistemic status to be a theist or an atheist. Now, again, I'm not prescribing that. I'm not saying you must. There's no logical or metaphysical necessity for that, but that's just how it's used in the domain of discourse. So this guy goes on and says, then you use that false definition to further assert that agnostic atheism, which again, I don't know what that means, bears a burden of proof. I never made such a statement because I don't know what agnostic atheism means. It's ambiguous to me. I have 3 blogs on it showing logically that it's ambiguous. Nobody's ever shown a non-ambiguated structure of how it would work using logic. Nobody's ever done this. I've asked for years and nobody's done it. I've had a couple people try. I did. I had a guy who knew logic a long time ago, really did give it a good college try, but I don't think he ever nailed it down, and I think he realized he never nailed it down because there's too much ambiguity there. And it really does all boil down to just atheist or theist. It's superfluous to add any kind of Gnostic condition, because we're just talking about beliefs, right? So to be a theist, there's no necessity to say I know God exists, right? So it's irrelevant. Nobody cares whether you know God exists or not if you're in the dosastic domain, right? No, I don't care. I just want to know what your beliefs are. We'll get into knowledge later at some point, but I mean, let's just stick with beliefs. And atheism does bear a burden of proof, just like theism does. Any position bears a burden of proof. Why would you not want a burden of proof? Burden of proof is what justifies your position as rational. If you don't have a burden of proof, you can't say your position is rational because you haven't justified it. In epistemology, burden of proof is the same thing as justification. Think of them as the same thing. I believe this because that. That is my burden of proof. That is my justification. It doesn't mean you have to actually prove anything. But if an atheist says, I'm an atheist, but I have no burden of proof, they're saying literally to you, I'm an atheist, but I have no reasons for my position, which makes them sound silly. April says, can an agnostic atheist be something who is an agnostic on current gods and atheist on past gods? You can make it anything you want. That's the problem. It's ambiguous. You can stipulate any kind of definitions you want. You can say agnostic atheist is somebody who doesn't care about gods, which is also known as apatheism. But does it really convey anything to anybody else who doesn't know what your stipulated definitions are? No. You ask 5 people what agnostic atheist is, you get 5 different answers, right? But if you want to say, I'm going to use agnostic atheist for this, you're allowed to do that. That's stipulative. Doesn't mean anybody else has to accept it, and sure, it's probably not going to be useful in conversation. Because again, all these people saying I'm an agnostic atheist, you ask them what they mean by it, they have all these bizarre things, right? Some of them will say, well, that means I don't know if God exists, but I don't believe. I don't know if God exists, but I do believe. There's no God. But it's like, what are you agnostic about for an agnostic atheist? If you're claiming lack of belief, right? If you're saying atheism is merely a lack of belief, then what are you being agnostic about? Are you agnostic about your lack of belief? Are you unsure, unsure of your position? Because agnostic generally means undecided, right? And if you lack a belief, then clearly it follows you don't know, right? You can't know something unless you believe it, because knowledge is a subset of belief. So it's superfluous. So all these people adding knowledge conditions are just muddying the water because it's either ambiguous or superfluous. Because if I say, I don't believe you, clearly I'm telling you I don't know what you're saying is true, right? Because I would have to believe you before I can even know. It's inherent in the statement, I don't believe you, that there's no knowledge component to it. It's superfluous. So he says, this is demonstrably false, which you haven't demonstrated, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And inevitably leads to a false dichotomy. I, again, don't think he understands what a dichotomy is. I asked, he didn't give me an explanation of what a dichotomy meant. A dichotomy is something where you have an element that can not be in, like, for example, two sets. They're mutually exclusive and they're jointly exhaustive. That just basically means that if you have something in set A, it cannot be in not A. It's mutually exclusive. You're in one or the other. And it's jointly exhaustive, meaning there's no other sets. So if I say it's black or it's not black, it's white or it's not white, it's up or it's not up, those are mutually exclusive, jointly exhaustive sets. But atheism, theism are not mutually exclusive, nor are they jointly exhaustive. Atheism and non-atheism is a dichotomy. Theism and not theism is a dichotomy. Now, some will argue that atheism and theism are dichotomous because they are mutually exclusive, but the problem is they're not jointly exhaustive. So if you have a weak understanding of dichotomy, and I mean like in the weak sense, and just mean dichotomous as a mutually exclusive, I can get that, and I understand that. I don't use the term that way. I use the term if and only if they are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. So to me, I would not say atheism and theism are a dichotomy, although I've had other people argue that they are a dichotomy because they're mutually exclusive. But the problem with that is, again, it implies that they're jointly exhaustive, and they're not, right? All right, so then he goes to say, by trying to pit Gnostic atheism against Gnostic and atheist theism while ignoring that agnostic atheism makes no claims. I have no idea what the hell that means. Could somebody explain that to me? When one of my mods, somebody smarter than me, which is pretty much everybody nowadays, explain to me what the hell that sentence conveys. I have no idea. I'm not trying to be demeaning, but it's just nonsensical to me. It's incoherent. This is demonstrably false and inevitably leads to a false dichotomy of what? By trying to pit Gnostic atheism, which I don't use, against Gnostic and agnostic theism, which I have no idea what that means, which ignoring that agnostic atheism makes no claims. I have no idea what agnostic atheism means, so I don't know what claims it makes. Yeah, and this, I mean, and Frida, you're absolutely right. This is something that a lot of atheists just don't seem to understand. Gnostic in the term knowledge does not mean knowledge as it does in modern times, in modernity. It doesn't mean things like tactile knowledge. It doesn't mean explicit knowledge. It doesn't even mean implied knowledge. It doesn't mean propositional knowledge. It doesn't mean a priori knowledge. It doesn't mean a posteriori knowledge. What it means or meant was nous, N-O-N-G-O-N-S, which in agnosticism meant the illusion of having knowledge. But the original term gnosis meant the hidden knowledge from divine gods. In other words, it was basically, they believe that you become one with the gods by obtaining hidden knowledge, divine hidden knowledge. And by that knowledge, you become one with them, right? It was secret. It was hidden from everybody else. And so, yeah, so Gnostic atheism, as Anafrida points out, would be divine knowledge of the gods that there are no gods. Seems kind of like a contradiction there, right? Right, Anafrida? Wouldn't that be a contradiction? Right? I mean, it's divine hidden knowledge from the gods, gnosis, that don't exist. So how did you get divine knowledge from something that doesn't exist? Yeah, it makes no sense. It's just nonsense. Get Real says, do middle position agnostics preserve any theism within their worldview? No, and neither do they preserve any atheism. If not, then they're not absent theism. Well, atheism is not absent theism explicitly, right? An agnostic is no more closer to theism nor it is to atheism. Graham Oppie wrote that. Agnosticism is no more closer to theism than it is to atheism. So an agnostic is neither theist nor atheist. It is without theism, it is without atheism. Atheism, it does not mean without in modern times. That's the etymological root of it, but the etymological roots do not determine word usages. In atheism, for theos, atheos, represents negation, specifically not. So it represents the negation of the proposition of theism, right? So the problem that atheists seem to have is they don't understand the negator doesn't go on the predicate. It goes on the proposition. Some atheists, I shouldn't say all, not you guys. You guys are the cool atheist, the smart atheist, the educated atheist. But the new atheist trademark, they don't. They certainly do not understand that theos represents the negation of the proposition. So if P as God exists, the negation of that as God does not exist. And so atheism is the belief that God does not exist, or the proposition that God does not exist, right? So yeah, that's confusing. So does anybody understand what he said? I mean, seriously, Anisfrida, you are a wordsmith. You are a linguistic guy. You know all about these words, Anisfrida. Does this guy make any sense to you so far? Because if he does, you're going to have to explain it to me in the comment section later. Get Real says, why does it matter what side you're closer to? You're not closer to either side. You're absent theism. You're also absent atheism. As soon as you reach that point, that's atheism. It's also atheism. Again, an agnostic is not theist nor atheist. You're without theism and you're without atheism. I don't know why that's confusing. Your argument hinges so hard on bad definitions. Why? My definitions are well defined in my paper. I literally use Dr. Lorenz Demi's logical system in order to define my definitions. How is that bad? I'm using a semiotic square of opposition. If you want to show that is wrong, show how on the square of opposition the definitions can differ. I show the subalterations. I show the contraries. I show the contradictions. Show me that those are wrong. What definitions would you use for the subalterations? What definitions would you use for the contradictions? I mean, theist and not theist is a contradiction. So you have theist and you have non-theism. Non-theism represents not theist. What definition would you like to use for that? Theist, a person who believes in God. Not theist, a person who does not believe in God. I don't know what other definition you would use. Get Real. Take any other word with a prefix. It means absent of. No, it doesn't. Abreast doesn't mean without breast. Affront, it doesn't mean without front. You may want to look at your etymological roots there. Get Real. You're absolutely incorrect. A has a lot of... A is called the Greek alpha primitive. It has a lot of usages, including not, without, to, and a few other usages. So, yeah, you're completely wrong with that because, again, does the breast mean without breast? No, clearly not. And you're also committing what's called the etymological fallacy. Agnosticism literally means absence of knowledge. No, that is incorrect. Thomas Henry Huxley defined the word agnosticism with the word nous as root, meaning the illusion of having knowledge. Go read Flint, Agnosticism, 1903. He wanted to use that word because he didn't have a word that described his position, but he also felt that theists and atheists were not justified for their belief. So what you're doing now is committing what's called an etymological fallacy. Just because a prefix is used with one word in one way doesn't mean it's used the same way of all of them. But if you want to get with somebody on that, get with Anisfrida. He does linguist stuff. Okay, atheism is not synonymous with not theism. They're not the same thing. Go read Dr. Demi's work. Anisfrida says, no, it's making sense to me. It may have some internal consistency if you ignore the fact that he doesn't know what gnosis, gnostic, and agnostic means. Okay, well, sure. If I ignore the fact that every word he uses is weird and confusing, then sure, it makes sense. I mean, I know what the word this is. The words this is, I get that. And I understand that conjunction. I understand by. Yeah. So... all right, moving on here because Get Real's not understanding it at all. Sorry. Okay. So he goes on to say Gnostic theism, complete surety that a God exists. Really? I have I have never seen anywhere written. I'm not even talking about scholarly work. I'm just talking about an atheist in general. That particular usage. So he's saying that a Gnostic theist would be completely sure that a God exists? Really? Because knowledge doesn't require surety. right? There's two types of belief conditions for knowledge. There's the weak acceptance case and there's a strong acceptance case. Strong acceptance case argues that to have knowledge, one must be certain. The weak acceptance case argues that you do not need knowledge to be certain. You just need to have belief. And it has to be true and it has to be justified under justified true belief. Nothing is ever about surety. We don't have surety about anything besides possibly a priori knowledge. But I don't know where he gets that from. That is just pulled out of his ass. Agnostic theism accepts the claim that God exists until shown false. Okay, that's a fallacy right there. Can anybody tell me what the fallacy name is that? So he says accepts the claim that God exists until shown false. And agnostic atheism rejects the claim. By the way, rejects means in logic to accept negation, right? So this actually would read as accepts the claim of God exists, or rejects the claim of God exists as accepting there are no gods until shown false. So what are those? Both of those are committing a fallacy. You guys, can you guys figure out the fallacy? Come on, I think you guys can do it. Gabriel says, this is why you're losing followers, Steve. Yeah, I'm culling out the people that are not interested in this. Absolutely. You've been trying to have this discussion for half a decade. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't want those idiots around. I'd rather have you guys that want to learn, because that's what I'm here for. And I just enjoy doing this. So yeah, this is why people never actually educate themselves, right? This guy clearly didn't understand it. And instead of actually trying to learn it himself, he just, repeats something, throws a little, jab, and then takes off. But you know what? At least you guys get to see it in real time, right? Flamo says, I'm not completely sure Steve McRae's exists. Yeah, that's not even my real first name, Flamo. My real name is Steven. All right. So, did you guys figure out what fallacy that he's using there? Come on, I don't want to have to tell you. I want to see if you guys can guess it. Accepts the claim that God exists until shown false. That's a well-known fallacy. Oh, this guy Get Real sounds like somebody that I recall a long time ago using some similar ridiculous argument. It's not a dilemma. He doesn't know what a dilemma is, obviously. Yes, Chris Taylor gets it correct. Sounds like an argument from ignorance. That's exactly what it is, Chris Taylor. See, I don't even have to tell you guys. That is, by definition, an argument from ignorance, or argument ad ignorantium. What he's saying is, I believe P because P has not been shown false. That is textbook argument from ignorance. So those two are just nonsensical. And then the last one, completely sure no gods exist. So a Gnostic atheist is completely sure there are no gods. I've never seen anybody tell me that before. I've heard they use the term Gnostic atheist to say, I know there are no gods. I've had some tell me Gnostic atheist means I believe there are no gods, but I don't think I've had anybody ever tell me I am sure there are no gods. Oh no, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. There is one of those stupid multi-axial diagrams out there that does have in one of the quadrants, I am sure there are no gods, or I'm certain there are no gods. So I have seen that before. Okay, it's stupid. It's just nonsensical. You don't require surety, and knowledge doesn't even require certainty. So none of those things make sense. This is why I asked him. I said, "Do you have a philosophical citation for any of this stuff?" These are just stipulatively used by him, and they're nonsensical to me. So I'm like, what's the point? You making stuff up does not refute my work, right? So this is him making up stipulative things that are just nonsense, saying that he refuted my paper. And wisdom cause, you're exactly right, by the way. The law that right there can be derived into the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle. So that right there, which is law of excluded middle, shows that for every P you have a not P, right? And that's not a dilemma. A dilemma is something Euphros's dilemma, right? Is what's good because the gods decreed it, or is it good because it's decreed by the gods, right? Is a man pious because, is it piety from the gods because the gods demand or create, say so, or is it because it is that for the gods decree it, right? That's Euphoros' dilemma. So for the law of excluded middle, which you can derive the law of non-contradiction, it clearly shows that for every P, you have not P. So yeah, you're doing them contemporaneously. You cannot extricate one from the other. They're coextensive with each other. And so you're always dealing with both of them. If I claim the sky is blue, that is either true or false, right? It is one or the other. It's either true or it's not true. Right? And then he follows up by saying, no algebraic formula changes that. Changes what? This is incoherent. You making up stuff, Joe, is not a refutation of my paper. None of your usages make sense. None of them are used anywhere on the planet that I've seen in any kind of academic journal or paper or nothing. It's just not even wrong. But let's move on to somebody who actually tried to refute my paper in a little bit more coherent way, although they made some fundamental mistakes. This is amateurish. This is rank 0, so that goes away. All right, so let me pull up this. This guy actually wrote a blog. This guy actually wrote a blog on my paper yesterday, which is pretty impressive. It's only been out 24 hours, and he already wrote a blog on it. That basically tells me that people are paying attention to my work, right? Maki says, I'm interested in an explanation of epistemology that gets you to I am certain gods do not exist. I would too. I would be interested in reading that. That'd be a hell of a justification, right? I don't know how anybody can meet that level of justification when you have people that argue that we're not certain of anything, which there might be some reasoning for that, although I do think that we can claim certainty on certain things such as self-existence and a priori knowledge. I'm okay with that. I mean, to me, all of x equals x is a certainty. It has to be true in all possible worlds. You can't get around it. If that doesn't mean, if we're not talking about certainty, then what are we talking about there? You know, people get into Descartes' certainty and things of that nature. But even then, it's, as far as I'm concerned, for the term certainty, I'm using it in a way where it just cannot be wrong. And so that, to me, is what conveys the actual usage of that word to make it useful. Yeah. April says, am I in there? I tried to refute your paper 4 times and it was very unsuccessful. But you gave it a good college try. April, for the record, you actually did go through the logical steps. I mean, you actually checked the tables and all that stuff, right? To show, and I did have to check my mathematicians, obviously, but I mean, you checked to make sure that the logic flowed. I didn't have any typos. I didn't have any negators that were wrong, anything like that, correct? Get Real says that Winsom's curse. Stop fence sitting when the fence doesn't exist. I hate to break it to Get Real here, but negative atheism is fence sitting. The position that lack of belief, that atheism is merely a lack of belief, that you have no conviction either way, that you're not convinced, is fence sitting. I have literally proven by logic that weak atheism is logically the same exact position as weak theism and agnosticism. They're no different. If you believe something, you know it? No, that's absurd. Knowledge is a subset of belief, dude. Here's what I recommend, Get Real. Go to college, take a course in philosophy and epistemology, because everything you've been saying is grossly incorrect. Knowledge is a subset of belief in belief-first theories, which is the most common, like justified true belief. You want to start using pragmatic theories, that's completely different. Semantic theories, whatever. But the most common theories out there are belief-based. First, knowledge, if you believe it, you justify to believe it, and it's true. What would it mean to believe something and not know you believe it? No. You know that what you said was, if you believe something, you know it. Now you're changing that. Now you're saying, if you believe something and not know you believe it. That's completely different things. If I believe something, then I believe that I believe it. If I know something, I know that I know it. That's actually called the KK principle. If I know P, then I know that I know P. If I know that I know P, that implies that I know that I believe P, because knowledge implies belief. So the KK principle entails, I know that I know P, and then I know that I believe P. So that's really odd, dude. So yes, if you believe it, you know that you believe it, but that doesn't mean that you have knowledge of the proposition. It just means that you know that you have an epistemic disposition towards it. I'm not an atheist. I'm not theist either. Does it make sense? Does everybody make sense out there for the KK principle that if you know something, you know that you know it, right? So if I say I believe 1 + 1 = 2, I also know that I believe 1 + 1 = 2. I actually know that 1 + 1 = 2. So I actually know that I know 1 + 1 = 2, which entails that I believe 1 + 1 = 2. See, it's not that hard if you just think about it as subsets. Knowledge is a subset of belief. How can you have a belief and not be aware of it? That's a completely different question. You're conflating what's called explicit knowledge with epistemological knowledge. This is called equivocation fallacy. So get real. What you're doing is basically you're taking a word that you don't understand and you're using it multiple different ways because you're conflating knowledge with information. They're vastly different things. In epistemology, the word knowledge means something very specific. It's not the same as being aware of something. It's not the same as information. I know how to play guitar is not referring to propositional knowledge. It's not referring to knowledge in the epistemological sense. There are multiple forms of knowledge. There's implied knowledge, there's explicit knowledge, there's tacit knowledge, there's a priori knowledge, there's a posteriori knowledge, there's procedural knowledge. There's a lot of different types of knowledge. Words have usages. Most words are polysemous. What you're doing is conflating one usage with another, which is causing an equivocation error. So I can say I believe P, which means I know P, I'm aware of P. I know of the proposition, right? But if I say I believe God exists, that doesn't entail you know God exists. What it entails is that you know of the proposition. I'm answering your question. How can you believe something and not know you believe it? You can't. I just said, if you believe something, you know you believe it. Middle position is I don't know what side I'm on, so you don't know what you believe. Right, and the middle position is I don't believe it's true and I don't believe it's false. Do you understand that you don't have to pick a position of true or false? The proposition is either true or false, but you don't have to pick a side. Right, so the middle position is agnostic. I am agnostic on a proposition that I don't assign a truth value to. Are you saying that you must believe that something's true or false? You aren't taking sides, right? So what belief regarding those sides are you aware of? You're aware of the proposition. April, can you do me a favor? Can you go find the Gunballs and God essay that I wrote on my blog and put in the live chat for him? It might help him out. I think he's really confused. So let me ask Get Real, because I would like to get to this particular blog here, because this guy actually took the time to write a blog on my paper, and it's wrong, but I feel, that if somebody's going to spend that effort on it, then I'm probably going to, try to show why the mistakes are made in it. But Get Real, let me ask you again, do you have to take a position? Do you have to assign a truth value to a proposition? And I don't know what Wisdom's Cause position is. Wisdom Cause, what is your position? Get Real, no, okay, then that's called the agnostic position. Right? So if you don't assign a truth value and you're saying atheism is just a lack of belief, you're not assigning a truth value, which is agnostic. If you're not saying your position either way, that is called agnostic on P. That is the middle position. Congratulations. Not hard. Do you get it now? Do you get it now? All right. On the semantic collapse of God beliefs, Daniel Goldman writes this. 5-minute read. It's not long. Responding to Steve McRae's argument on defining atheism. And it's not really that's what it is. I don't like the way that's worded because I'm not defining atheism. But I get what he's saying, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong because I am arguing about how people are defining the word. Eastern Orthodoxy. Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. Eastern Orthodoxy generally actually understands this kind of stuff. I do know some Eastern Orthodox people. They're pretty intelligent. All right, so let's read this. Get Real says, what? I'm sorry, guys. Get Real says, why does truth matter here? It's what you believe. People can't believe false things. Sure, but wouldn't you like to believe true things? Right? If you don't have a belief the other way, though, you're agnostic. So I don't think you have an argument there, Get Real. You just literally have shown us the middle position. All right. Some of my acquaintances on Twitter were having a semantic disagreement between the definition of atheism. Not exactly what it was, but okay, I'm not going to nitpick. For many, atheism is defined as the belief that there are no gods. This is true, right? By the way, follow along with me. When you guys see an error, let me know. I've already gone through this, and I've already written down my notes, but I don't want to bring them up. I'm doing this off the top of my head now. But I did go through this, and I wrote some notes down, but I really don't want to bring them up. So that's right. Okay. However, I've long argued that this definition does not work. Well, your arguments, I haven't seen your arguments, and I haven't seen any good arguments against that. The only argument I've seen that holds any merit whatsoever is the argument from demographics or for political reasons, which something like genetically modified skeptic would argue. Other than that, from any philosophical or epistemological standpoint, I have never seen a good argument for defining things in the negative. Flu's argument, the presumption of atheism, which is my paper refuting, in his paper in 1972 was not well received. It had massive issues with it, and it's been long since gone over many times. Burgess Jackson in 2017 wrote a paper called Rethinking the Presumption of Atheism, and he just annihilates Flu's argument, and he does so very, very well. And I did draw upon some of his work as well. Let's see here. Gumballs and God. Did you find it? Yes, thank you. April. So April put Gumballs and God essay in the live chat. I would recommend you go read it. Good, real. The middle position does not include theism nor atheism. That's why it's called the middle position. Eastern Orthodoxy is satanic. Well, that's cool. Satanism's fine here. We welcome Satanists here. Go Satanists. You know, it's funny. I was at work the other day and somebody came in with a Ghost shirt. I'm like, yes, Ghost is a satanic metal band. Although they're not really metal. I don't know what the hell they are. I don't even know what genre to put Ghost in. They're all over the place because they're not really hard metal. They have like 1 or 2 songs that are really metal. The rest are just like, I don't know, cool. But yeah. I mean, I can get Nice Christian Man and Wisdom Cause in here one of these days and they can fight it out. All right. So he says, I've long argued that this definition does not work. Why? And that atheism should be defined as a lack of belief in gods. Well, if you do that, then theism should be defined as a lack of belief that gods do not exist, else you're special pleading, which is my WASP argument. And it's so funny, is my paper literally shows why, if you actually do it the way he wants, what happens. It actually leads to a semantic collapse, which he doesn't refute in here. I'll tell you right now, I'll give you a heads up, he doesn't refute it. All right, on the other hand, this acquaintance, Steve McRae, that's me, by the way. That's me. Was arguing that we must define atheism as the belief that there are no gods. I've never, ever, 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 ever argued that. Ever. Or we end up with a semantic collapse where a person can be an atheist, theist, or agnostic at the same time. Yeah, I don't like the way that's worded. I'm not saying you must define atheism as anything. What I'm saying is, if you do not define atheism as a belief, if you do it in the negative case, then this is what happens, right? There's some amphibole here to some degree, because you could read this multiple different ways, saying that, oh, Steve was arguing that we must define atheism as a belief, and that's not what I was doing. So it is a little bit amphibolous here, and I don't like that because people twist stuff all the time, right? Wisdom says, no, I'll be working 60-hour weeks soon. Yeah, probably not worth it. And even if the Eastern Orthodox is satanic, I'm okay with that. So, okay, we got an error. We got an error there. Chris says there's an error. Did I already point it out, or where's the error? So you tell me where you see an error that I may have missed, and we'll go from there. The argument is interesting, thank you, and relies heavily on solid logical analysis, thank you, but it fails to justify its initial assumptions. All right, so let me get this straight here. And I did talk to this guy. He seems nice. He seems decent. He's not like some fruit of the ground, ACA type atheist. He has some education. He's not heavily educated in all this by any means. No, neither am I, though. So, but I mean, he's not an idiot. This guy at least tried. I think he's learning. And I think, we're all learning, because I'm still learning this stuff, even though I think I've got this particular niche down pretty good. Well, it's still a long ways to go compared to the people with actual degrees, right? But okay, Chris points it out that you say we must define atheism as such. Yeah, because again, it's how you want to. This is contextualizing. What did he mean by that? Was arguing that we must define atheism as a belief there are no gods, or we end up. I mean, if I get principled charity because of the independent clause, then it may work. If you didn't have the independent clause. Excuse me, the dependent clause. The dependent clause of or we end up with the semantic collapse. If you didn't have that dependent clause, then it would be wrong. But see, I think he's arguing on the independent clause, was arguing that we must define atheism as a belief there are no gods, or this is what happens. Right? But the problem with that I have is that there are other ways of defining atheism without even using belief. Right? You can define atheism as the rejection of the proposition of theism, which entails a belief, but I don't like the terminology here because this is saying that prescriptively trying to define atheism. And I understand people to say, like, how are you defining a word? But to me, that's still descriptive. The only time you really define something prescriptively is in mathematics and logic for the most part. So, oh yeah, fruit on the ground. Oh, hey, John, yeah. Long time ago, I had a series called Fruit on the Ground Creationists. And what that meant was there's such a thing as low-hanging fruit, right? But these creationists were so low-hanging fruit that they weren't even on the tree any longer. So I called them Fruit on the Ground. It's kind of stuck. So if you ever hear that Fruit on the Ground, that's from... you don't remember that? My series on the Fruit on the Ground Creationists? That goes back a ways. It's just been around for so long. Yeah, so I started using that a very long time ago. Fruit on the ground people are just people that are so low hanging fruit that they fell off the tree. So feel free to run with it. Put it out there. Just give me credit for it because I never heard anybody else use the term. You can Google it, but I've never heard anybody use the term before. So way back then I was like, that's funny. Fruit on the ground. All right, so yeah, that is a little bit ambiguous there, but we'll let it slide. But he says this. He says, and relies heavily on solid logical analysis. I appreciate that, right? I appreciate that, but fails to justify its initial assumptions. I'm not sure why I have to justify assumptions. Assumptions are axiomatic. I don't need to justify assumptions. They're unjustifiable. I mean, axioms are assumed true in a logical argument. They're assumed true in a logical argument. What the person refuting the argument has to just show is that the assumptions are not warranted to be accepted or are false, which he fails to do. Right? I don't have to justify anything. I can say, here are my assumptions. Here's what follows from it. And he seems to agree that what my argument follows from my assumptions is true. So I mean, he's really conceding my argument at this point, I think. He literally says, look, you don't justify your assumptions, but if your assumptions are true, then yeah, your conclusion falls by solid logical analysis, right? Doesn't that kind of concede my argument? And I would just argue I don't have to justify my assumptions, but if you think my assumptions are wrong, show me. You don't need to justify axioms. That's why they're called axioms. They're unjustified, right? You can pick and choose anything you want. I mean, in ZFC, which I don't know much about, but in ZFC, I can choose the axiom of choice or not choose the axiom of choice. Do I have to justify to you why I chose the axiom of choice or not? No, of course not. We got mathematicians out there. Any mathematicians, when you write a paper, you talk about the axiom of choice. When you're doing something topological or set theory, do you say in your paper, I chose the axiom of choice and justify it by this? No, you're using ZFC rather than ZF theory. By using ZFC, you're like, okay, I'm obviously including the axiom of choice. So, did you talk about my wasp in here, Helando? I haven't got that. I mean, I read this the other day, but I don't remember that in there. I'll look. Chris says, yep, I wrote earlier your argument is a kind of reduction. You assume initially weak atheism. Why justify it? Yeah, reductio. Yeah, and technically this is not a reductio. because reductio ad absurdum, which start with the initial premises, right, and then show those premises to be false. My paper doesn't show them false. My paper shows the conclusions, the entailments, what happens if you use those types of assumptions, right? So I wouldn't call it a reductio ad absurdum, but I do get what you're saying on it. But yes, if you do in a reductio absurdum, why would you justify your assumptions? You just pick your assumptions, run with it, do your reductio, and then if you conclude with a contradiction, you have a reductio, you have a proof. You don't have to justify your... Why would that even mean? Why would you justify your assumptions if you're trying to prove the assumption's wrong? What would be a justification other than, here's my assumption, I'm trying to prove the assumption wrong, here's my proof by reductio, it's done, right? I don't... It's bizarre to me. All right, so that's just odd there. All right, moving on. Analysis of argument. The argument begins by allowing, quote, weak atheism. Okay. Essentially, rather than defining theism as a belief that there's a God, it is redefined as a lack of belief in the proposition that there are no gods. That's actually not what I did. First of all, I didn't redefine anything. Okay, there's no redefinitions going on. What I argued, and this is where I think the WASP comes in, is that by allowing weak atheism, it seems to automatically, by some kind of implication, imply weak theism, right? I mean, if you allow weak atheism to have a strong and weak case, it just follows that you have to have a strong and weak theism, or else you're special pleading. You know, why allow it for atheism, but you can't allow it for theism when they're coextensive propositions? So I'm not redefining theism as anything. I'm showing here's theism, which is the belief that God does not exist. Or excuse me, the belief that God exists, and here's weak theism, the lack of belief that there are no gods. So I'm not redefining theism. I'm actually defining weak theism, and then saying if you use weak theism as theism, this is what happens. Just like if you use weak atheism as atheism, this is what happens. But I'm not defining it as such. So I think that's kind of off there. The argument also includes a discussion of agnosticism, but even without it, there's a fundamental flaw in the conclusion. Okay. What's the flaw? Okay. By the way, when we get to the Venn diagram, the first person who correctly points out the glaring problem in his Venn diagram, there's a couple of ways you can word it, but we'll see. What can I do for them? I'll give him a mod for a week, and let's see how that goes. Maybe I'll leave it longer, but I'll give him a mod for a while. So as soon as you see that Venn come up, because it has a. See, I was like, what? Because you guys seen my Venn diagram, the one I did with Kurt Knoll, Landon Kurt Knoll. This guy's Venn though is way off the mark, and it's pretty obvious just by you looking at it by when he labels by his labeling where his error's at. But yeah, Kimamaki Oppie says as much in the quote at the beginning of the paper, right? I specifically quote Oppie for that very reason. Yeah, Chris. He says he sees no logical errors, but there's a flaw in the conclusion. Exactly. Thank you. That's bizarre to me, right? Who cares if you justify the axioms or not? The whole point of the paper is, yes, if you have these axioms, this is what flows. If you agree with that, boom, the paper's correct. Now, it could have some silly axioms, and you can argue, well, this is, the axioms are, I don't know. I don't know any silly axioms or something you can just make up. But sure, there are reasons to say, okay, this is kind of silly, but I'm not making any silly argument here. This is a very cogent argument here. Well, since I use cogent because it's not inductive, but yeah, it's weird to say that. Yeah, it's strong. It's logically, valid. It's solid logical analysis. But then you try to argue the assumptions, which, by the way, it's fine to argue the assumptions are wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. Do that. Show me that a assumption is wrong. But just to say that I've defined something in some way, that's not showing that it's wrong. You can define things any way you want. Showing that an assumption is wrong is saying that I assume X does not equal X, well, then you got a problem, right? Because that's a contradiction. You already, started unless you're trying to show something with using contradiction. So it might be even times to start with a contradiction to show, like, for example, principle of explosion. You can prove, if you start with X does not equal X, you can prove anything by principle of explosion. So there might be a reason to even have that axiom, right? But if I start with an axiom that you can prove it or show that it's false, like, I don't know, the sky is purple polka dot with yellow stripes, Okay, well, I'm going to say that proposition is false. Why? Because I looked outside and the sky's blue right now, right? So then in that case, I reject your proposition, your assumption. But you can assume anything you want. Autistic Layman says, so is weak atheism another version of agnostic atheism? I have no idea. Again, nobody's given me a coherent structure for agnostic atheism. And so it can mean many different things to many different people. And so it's ambiguous. And I think it's just ridiculous that people use it. I'll show the Venn. I'll show my Venn too. In comparison. Let me get my Venn ready. A sec. Talk amongst yourselves for a second. This is a really chill stream. Like I said, I'm not expecting many people to watch this because they just don't have an interest in this, and that's fine. I do this for myself. I'm chilling with you guys. It is my day off. I got called into work three days off. 3 days off. I got called into work, which is not bad. It's cool. I mean, they're basically they're like, yeah, you do your job well. Can you come in? It's like, sure. Yes, I appreciate it. I like what I do. All right. So he says there's a fundamental flaw in the conclusion. Let's see what the fundamental flaw is. The argument proceeds to show that under this construction, it is easier to show that a person can be a theist and an atheist at the same time, thus leading to so-called semantic collapse. Yeah, I agree. Matter of fact, as Maki pointed out, Oppie notes the same thing in his work. He just doesn't prove it. So I'm not the first to note this. Hey, mouse. Yes, we can. Yes, the mouse files. We can see you, little mouse. I don't know why your little mouse account does not work. I have no idea. I really don't. But you're not the only one that told me that, little mouse. Piggly Wiggly and somebody else, I don't remember who it was, but they also said for some reason that they don't show up in the chat. Are you managing again? No, I'm in loss prevention, which is not a management position, but I didn't want a management position. There was one open, supervisory, and I'm like, nope, not gonna do that again. I like loss prevention. I get to monitor cameras. Get to wear a cool vest with loss prevention on it. And so I'm good at monitoring cameras. I've done it for a long time. I've already caught numerous people doing shady stuff. But I mean, I'm in an area where there's just crazy people. Some of these people here are just flat out nuts. They're all whacked out on crack. So you never know what you're dealing with crazy customers and stuff like that. And so, like, I'm not going to go into some details, but I'll save it for another show and, just retail horror stories, But yeah, there's some weird people where I live. But I didn't want management. I was like, nope, I'm not going back into that rat race. I've got plenty of hours, and I survive without losing my mind. Because management, man, I'm telling you, man, management get usually worked to death. All right, Mouse. Have a good one, Mouse. Yeah, like I said, I wish I knew. I wish I could. I just try becoming a. I hate to say this, but try becoming a member and see if it goes green on you. And you can remove it afterwards. But I really don't know why her other account doesn't work. FNAF. What is that? What game is that? I just downloaded BioShock the other day. I'm going to play that again. I haven't played that game in ages, and it's a little hard on my computer because my fans are still out on my GPU. I'm using a small cooling fan from the chassis. It's a good card, though. I don't want to replace the card. I love this video card. I just really got to figure out to have a better cooling system because it does. BioShock on the high really does tax my system, and this is a great system. All right, moving on. It is true that under this definition, a theist can be an atheist. Wow, there you go. There you go. My paper reviewed by this guy agrees with my work. There you go. I don't know what else there is to go from there, because everything else is just doesn't matter. All right. He says, this issue seems like a contradiction, specifically because we think of theism as the belief that there is no God. The author modified the definition of theism so that a person does not have to believe in a God to be a theist. Well, same with an atheist, right? An atheist, using his vernacular here, right? I'm not saying this is exactly what's happening, but using his vernacular, an atheist is modifying the definition of atheism so that a person doesn't have to believe that God does not exist to be a theist. That should be to be an atheist, right? It works both ways. If you say that you're modifying theism so that a person doesn't have to believe in God to be a theist, that's the same thing that atheist is doing by saying, I am modifying the definition of atheism, which is normally the belief that God does not exist, to does not believe that a God exists. It's the same freaking thing. If you allow for one, you must allow for the other, as if not, that is special pleading. Oh, Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah, I know. I've never played that game. Is it fun? I know a lot of people that do. Furthermore, by the way, I do work nights mostly. I like my night shift, which is where all the crazy people come out because it's cooler, right? But I do apologize. I haven't been around much. I prefer working in real life over the internet anymore. I don't deal with any of the nonsense. I don't have to deal with, dishonest. Well, I have to deal with dishonest people, but not like this. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still putting out content. I'm still doing the Non Sequitur show. I'm still putting out content on my channel, but my content on this channel is going to be more philosophically based and things of that nature. Although I've got some other videos I'm going to review, and I still want to address some of the things in the Amber Heard case, Johnny Depp case. So that's what I'm going to have fun on this channel, but it's fun. I'm not going to be giving a shit what people think. I don't care. I like my night shifts. It's so much cooler. And like I said, I'm definitely doing the Non Sequitur show. So things are good. Things are good. All right, moving on here. All right, so this is, like I said, this is the whole crux of it, because if atheists are allowed to do it, then theists can do it. Anybody else can do it. And so, you guys agree that you can just modify this to say the author modified the definition of atheism so that a person does not have to believe that God does not exist to be an atheist. Same thing. All right. Furthermore, the author forgot about the modifiers strong and weak. Wait, what? What? The very fierce thing in my paper mentions strong and weak. I literally quote Oppie. Talking about strong and weak. How have I forgotten about the modifiers, which I don't use personally, because I think that I don't see a point of using those modifiers, because what those modifiers represent is where the negator goes. Right? It represents as a negator go in front of the proposition or in front of the predication. Strong would mean in front of the proposition. Weak means in front of the predication. So a strong atheist would be somebody who believes there are no gods. A weak atheist would be does not believe there's a God. But that's the location of the negator. This is my whole paper on this. How does he mean I forgot? April 5 Canadian. Thank you, April. You are so kind. Seriously, I mean, you're always super chat, and I really appreciate it. You like working more than me. I'll try not to cry too much. You might like working a lot. Who knows? But I enjoy my time with you guys. I love this. This is, like I said, this is my first real day off I've had in a while. I got the place to myself, and I'm having coffee and having fun, and yeah, I mean, it's good. Now, if I can get some people to subscribe to the channel eventually, that'd be nice. I know you can, April, and I know you told me that. But like I said, I so much appreciate your support, modding, and donating super chats. It really does. I do notice it, April, very much, and your engagement on Twitter and all that stuff. But if anybody else wants to be a member, you get a cool green name. Yeah. All right. So I don't know what he meant by this. I don't know what I forgot. Only a weak atheist can be a weak theist. Wait. Okay. Whew. I have proven using logic that all weak atheists are in fact weak theists, but it's not only. An agnostic is also a weak atheist, and agnostic is also a weak theist. Logically speaking, if there's no positive epistemic status. I've already proven this. That's a different thing altogether. I don't know how I would publish that on academic edu, because that proof is a lot more winded, and I would have to rewrite it in a lot more formal way in order to think it, structured enough to put on academia edu, and I don't really have an interest in doing that. But let's assume, arguendo, that I have proven this. Okay, just work with me here. But weak atheist, weak theist, and agnostic are the same logical position if you do not have an positive epistemic status. Okay. Oh, not Twitter. Yeah, not Twitter. No, nobody's pretending to be you. No. No, I remember. You don't. But you should get Twitter, April. If you get somebody being you, that just means you made it. All right. Such a belief state would be fully neutral. Well, that's what agnostic is, right? So, I mean, what's so funny is he's not actually. Forget this only. This modifier here is wrong. But here, a weak atheist can be a weak theist. That's actually right. Actually, a weak theist is a weak theist. Such a state of belief would be fully neutral. Agnostic. Yeah. That actually correct, dude. I will go with that because like I said, I've proven that to be the case. But I don't know what he means by the author forgot. I don't. Moreover, based on the construction, one cannot be a strong atheist and a strong theist, or even a strong atheism and a weak theist. Okay, so let's parse this. Okay. Moreover, based on the construction, one cannot be a strong atheist and strong theist. That is correct. Those would be a contradiction, right? An epistemic contradiction. Now, it's not technically, I think, I wouldn't put it as a logical contradiction, but it is a epistemic, or mental in this case, contradiction. You can have it as far as a state of Atheism, or you can have it as paraconsistent logic, basically, but it is not logically exclusive to say I believe it's true and believe it's false. What that is a like I said, it's an epistemic issue, because in your brain you can actually have what's called cognitive dissonance, where you actually believe contradictions, right? So it's generally speaking that you cannot be a strong atheist and a strong theist. Yes, I'm going to go with that, but that's not a logical necessity. It's an epistemic one, okay? But then he says, or even strong atheism and a weak theist. Well, okay, so weak theist would be somebody who does not believe that God does not exist, right? So a strong atheist does believe that God does not exist. So yes, a strong atheist cannot be a weak theist, and a weak atheist cannot be a strong theist. Correct. Okay, so he is correct on this. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say this is okay. Indeed, strength and weakness are mutually exclusive. Strength has nothing to do with strong or weak. The strength of an argument is irrelevant to strong and weak atheism. Strong and weak atheism, or strong and weak theism, merely are where the negator goes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean the level of conviction. Now, there is a correlation there, right? I mean, if I'm a weak atheist, don't have a positive epistemic status, so I'm not as convinced there are no gods, right? So there's a level of conviction there, but strength is not the same thing, what we mean by strong and weak. Strong and weak is where the negator goes. That's it. Thus, there are no actual semantic claps. I don't know how that follows. I don't get that. I don't follow that. Strength and weakness are mutually exclusive. Again, strength and weakness, what does that mean? We're not talking about the weakness of an argument or the strength of an argument. Strong and weak, I think this is an equivocation issues that he's having here. I don't think he's realizing that strong and weak here is where the negator goes. It's not a matter of level of conviction. A strong atheist isn't somebody who goes, I'm really an atheist. I believe there are no gods. It's, I believe there are no gods as the position of the negator on the proposition. That's all. Strong atheist sounds badass, yeah. Instead, we obtain an even better way to discuss the types of beliefs a person does or does not hold concerning gods. Okay. Furthermore, it is only because we allow broader, non-traditional meaning to theism, just like you're doing for atheism. Same thing. You're taking a non-traditional, non-standard, atypical usage, that we have an overlap where a person could be a weak atheist and a weak theist at the same time. Well, yeah, because you're using an atypical uses of atheist. I'm using the same atypical uses of theist to show the semantic collapse. But what's funny is even if you don't have the theist position, even if I didn't include theist and just said agnostic, right? Even if I didn't say anything about weak theism, a weak atheist is still agnostic, right? The square of opposition shows this. My paper shows that a weak atheist is an agnostic. So it just follows that a weak atheist is also agnostic, is also a weak theist if you're using weak and strong modifiers, which again isn't level of conviction, but where the negation goes. And by the way, I will note on this, you will note something very glaring on this blog. He never once actually talks about the square of opposition. He never once talks about the subalterations. He never once talks about the contradictions or the what are they called? The subalterations or the contraries. He never talks about any of those, right? So he's not arguing against my paper. How could you argue against my paper if you're not even using the square of opposition? Show me on the square of opposition the labels here then. If you want to use different nomenclature, show me on a semiotic square of opposition where I went wrong. The argument that a person cannot be an atheist or theist at the same time hinges on the views that all theists believe in God. Well, then you can argue that all atheists believe God does not exist. Again, if you're talking about categories, you have to allow one and the other. You have to be consistent. If you say all theists believe in God, then you have to say all atheists believe in there are no gods, right? You have to, because you're making a categorical statement. You have to be consistent for symmetry. If not, you're special pleading. Now, the problem you run into is because atheists have tried to redefine, and I will use redefine because that's what they really kind of have to do. And they actually did this with Merriam-Webster, I think it was. They've actually wrote to them and they said, hey, we want this word defined this way. So there was an active thing to do it. But, it's weird to say all theists believe in God, but not all atheists believe there are not a God. It just seems weird to me. It's a lack of symmetry there. Right, because you're giving an unfair stature to one and not the other group. Right? If all theists believe God exists, then the problem that you're running into is in philosophy, all atheists believe there are no gods, which is true. In academically speaking, philosophical atheism, the sufficiency condition is that you believe there are no gods. So all atheists believe there's a God. All atheists believe there is not a God. There has to be that symmetry there. That's what exists in philosophy. But then he tries to say, well, atheists do not believe in a God. Well, yeah, but theists don't believe that God does not exist, regardless of whether they believe that there are no gods. So what he's trying to do here is he's taking the colloquial definition here, right, and he's applying it over here. You can't do that. Stick within a domain of discourse. Right? If you're gonna write a refutation and it's gonna be about philosophy, then you have to use the terminology in that domain of discourse. You can't just say I'm going to use a colloquial definition over here and say, well, not all atheists don't believe there are no gods, only because that's a semantic argument. You're just saying, hey, this group over here uses the term semantically different, but in philosophy, all atheists believe that there are no gods. Because this is the problem with using words colloquially in a specific domain of discourse. And this is where his problem lies. He's taking the fact that people are calling themselves atheist when they don't believe that they're when they're not making the claim there are no gods, which I'm not saying they can't do, right? It's semantics. It's a label. Use it if you want to use it that way. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about in philosophy. In philosophy, atheists believe there are no gods. Do you see the problem that he's running into? You see, I mean, maybe I'm not expressing it in the best way here, but do you see how he's taking a fact that these people outside of philosophy are calling themselves atheist and saying, oh, those people over there, they're atheists. They don't hold the belief there are no gods, but they're still atheists. Therefore, all theists believe in a God, but not all atheists don't believe there's God. Well, that doesn't work that way. You have to be consistent in your domain, right? And let me give an example. And it was Theo that from what's his name, the computer guy, Dr. Theo. I can't never pronounce his name. He used this as an example, and he's spot on. He said, when it comes to the word theory, if I say I have a theory in science, it means a specific thing, right? If I say there's a theory in science that talks about relativity. Relativity is a theory in science. That word theory means a very specific thing. But in a court of law, if I say I have a theory how the crime was committed, that means a very different thing, right? So he's taking the legal version of a word and using it in the scientific domain. Here, it's the same thing. He's using a colloquial uses of the word and putting it in the philosophical domain, and you can't do that. So I'll call them atheist, right? But philosophically speaking, they're agnostic. So you have to have consistency. And this right here shows a lack of consistency. That's the problem. You guys agree? All right, getting ready to go to the Venn diagram. So Venn diagram analysis. We have two overarching categories, atheism, theism. Right there, you're automatically wrong. Those are not mutually exclusive. I mean, so they're not jointly exhaustive. They're overlapping spheres. Okay, they're circles, not spheres. Spheres are three-dimensional. These are two-dimensionals. That, by the way, wasn't the glaring error that I was going to point out. They're not spheres. Venn diagrams are two-dimensional. When these spheres, we have strong and weak flavors. Okay, this isn't quantum chromodynamics, but whatever. Strong atheism and strong theism are exclusive in their own respective sphere, but there is an inner region which spans both atheism and theism, that the weaks, and where two weaks overlap is fully neutral with respect to the existence of God. The idea might be a little confusing, yeah, because what you're saying is just gobbledygook. It can help to view the categories and how they intersect using Venn diagrams. Considering the Venn diagram, the construction proposed by Steve. This is not how I propose this. This is just no. And by the way, I didn't recognize this when I first read this. Is he saying that I this is how I propose this? Because this is not my Venn diagram. This no. First of all, this is my Venn diagram. Okay, that's mine and Lantern Curtinol's Venn diagram. They're circles, not spheres. But if you notice something where my strong is located as opposed to his, tell me what's wrong with this Venn diagram. Like I said, I don't want to have to tell you. I want to see if somebody pointed out. He says the two outer regions, A and B, are strong and weak theism. Okay, so here's his regions, A and B. So everybody here would be a strong atheist, and everybody here would be a strong theist, which means that this group here, B, believes that there is a God. Group A believes that there is not a God, which does entail that you don't believe. But he says, while D and E are exclusively weak atheism and theism, respectively. However, C is interesting. Well, we got to get into that because it's weird. But can you guys see the problem here, though? As far as, I mean, do you guys want a hint? Think about this. I say if I give you a hint, it's going to give it away. I want to see if anybody can actually determine why D nested inside A is wrong. Why weak nested inside A is incorrect. Why E nested inside B is incorrect. Atheism and theism are mutually exclusive. They don't overlap at all. They don't overlap in regards to let me show you. Didn't mean to do that. One sec. Okay. See, in my thing with atheism and theism, see, they do overlap here. This is the intersection, right? But they only overlap here in the weak case, right? Strong doesn't overlap, right? So weak theist and weak atheism do overlap. That's agnostic. This region in the middle, right? These are agnostics that are undecided. They're weak atheist and they're weak theist. But the strong case don't overlap, right? In the Venn diagram that I have. So when you talk about atheism, theism being mutually exclusive, that's the two spheres here. Oh my God, they're not spheres, they're circles. Circles, buddy. There's a Venn diagram, they're two-dimensional. So you're right, atheism and theism don't overlap here in the strong case, only in the weak case, right? But here in his version, he has strong and weak theism overlapping to C, which is impossible. This is a contradiction here. So C is a contradiction because you can't have strong and weak atheism overlapping, because then you'd have a contradiction, which he notes up here. He even points out you can't do it. And then, should I just tell you guys the issue? I mean, yes, autistic layman, you are correct. So that's one error, big error that he has, that C should not exist here, because if he's defining A, that means everything in the blue where the intersection is, which is C and D, or excuse me, C, is going to be a theist as well, a strong theist, right? So everywhere in this, the way a Venn diagram works is everything in this area here, B, E, C have subsets of B in this diagram here, right? So E being weak atheism is a subset of B, and C, the union in A of B, is a subset of B. So he's saying C is a union of A and B. I'm sorry, not union, intersection of A and B. That this position here are both strong and weak. It's both strong and theist and strong atheist. How does that work? How is this? How in the middle here can you be both strong atheist and weak atheist? That makes no sense. And I don't even know what the hell this circle here is. I mean, this green circle, I don't know what that represents. I have no idea. Should I just give it to you other than the problem here? Okay, so look. D and E are not subsets of these. Weak theism is not a subset of theism. Weak atheism is not a subset of atheism. It's the other way around. Strong theism is a subset of weak theism. Strong atheism is a subset of weak atheism. Because not all, if you want to use this terminology, not all atheists are strong atheists, right? Under this diagram, right? Not all categorical atheists, because of terminological issues, are atheists. Therefore, you have a group of atheists that are those specific atheists that say there are no gods, and then you have the atheists that just coin themselves lack of belief atheist. But because the group of strong atheism is smaller, it's a subset that's nested, right? So he's showing here that this region here of D, of being weak atheism, is a subset of strong. That means he's saying that all strong atheists are also, well, that's not the case. He's saying all strong atheism are weak atheists because strong is nested in there. But he's saying here, by the way the diagram's showing on D, is that people, I don't know how this even work, right? Because weak atheism is the position that you're not taking a strong case, right? You're not taking the strong stance. But here, all these people in C and D are taking the strong stance because it's included in A. Here's the blue circle for A. So everything inside of circle A is a strong atheist, including the weak atheist and those that overlap, which is impossible. No, he's not mocking me. No, he's not trolling. Nice. No, I talked to him on Twitter, and he legit thinks this is the case. You know? Yeah, it's not even wrong. That's what I said. It's not even wrong. It's just got so many issues with it. Perfect one. Hey, what's up, buddy? It's been a while. He says the term sphere, like the term atheist, is polysemous. So the term sphere can refer to three circle, but it also refer to things that are not a circle, like sphere of influence. Well, yeah, sure. But on a Venn diagram, it is a two-dimensional circle, right? They're circles, they're not spheres. Now, I mean, I understand you want to use a sphere of influence, but that's a social phenomenon, right? I think it's trying to put them on a continuum, but in the wrong way. Strong atheism, weak atheism, agnostic, weak theism, strong. And I think you're right. Yeah, I think so as well. But the way it's doing it doesn't work because of this overlapping in the middle here. So, all right, moving on. It says, it is where weak atheism and weak theism overlap. But you're also overlapping strong and theism and strong atheism here, buddy. C is still inside B. C is still inside A. So everybody in C here is, on this, according to this diagram, is a strong atheist, a weak atheist, a strong theist, and a weak theist. And again, I don't know what the hell this green circle is. Someone explain to me what this green circle is. Where does this green circle come from? What set is this? I'm so confused. I don't understand this. This is just it's incoherent to me. This is not even wrong, as Halando pointed out. Because it just if A is this set and B is this set, what is the set of green besides anybody who's a weak theist, a strong? No, I mean if you label them, he's saying that the set of green is all the things that including D, C, and E, which would be weak atheist, weak theist, and those that are both strong and weak, both strong theist and strong atheist. Because this right here is including all of these in here. So if I'm in the middle here, I'm literally in the blue circle, I'm literally in the black circle, and I'm literally in the green circle. I'm all the above. It hurts. I know, dude. This diagram, how do you think I feel, man? This diagram is making my head hurt. Yeah, this is bizarre. Now, again, though, is he saying that this is mine? Because he said, consider the Venn diagram for the construction proposed by Steve. This is not what I proposed. No. This is what I proposed. This is literally the Venn diagram that we came up with for the proof that weak atheism is the same as agnosticism. No. This hurts. Make it stop. All right, so yeah, I didn't propose this at all, dude. Yeah, you're just fundamentally wrong on that. All right, moving on. In other words, C can be considered true epistemic neutrality with respect to the existence of God. No, it can't. C here on your diagram is saying that there's somebody who believes there's a God and believes there's no God. It's literally in both circles on the Venn. Yeah, no, I think he's trying to do a continuum. No, I think so. I think you're right on that. But how is this epistemic neutrality? How is this somebody who's undecided if you're in the circle of blue, which is you're labeling strong atheist, and in the circle of black, which you're labeling strong theist? That's not somebody who's neutral. This is somebody who believes both, which would entail weak, obviously, right? Because strong does entail weak. If you're a strong atheist, that entails weak atheism, but weak atheism doesn't entail strong atheism. What a circle jerk. Yeah, it's just... So this is just wrong. Now, as already mentioned, theism is usually defined as a belief there is a God. Okay. Consider the Venn diagram for a usual setup, working under the view that atheism is a lack of belief in gods. Okay. And strong and weak atheism is determined by whether we have a belief that there are no gods. What? No? Okay. So here's strong atheism A and weak atheism. So again, what does this mean? Somebody who knows. Okay, it's been a long time since I've done maths. Okay, it has been a while, but I don't know what the hell this freaking I don't know what the hell this diagram means. Everything in C is still in circle. Is he labeling the circle? Labeling the? Help me, Jesus. I need God. I save me. April 5 Canadian. The green circle is made from bone manure from the fields of Bologna. Oh, exactly. It's magically something or other. Hi, Sadie Marie. How are you, darling? I did this at the time that's not too late for you, your time. Perfect says, I personally think that the green circle represents the group that feels Steve must be wrong, but don't know how that's so. Possibly, buddy, possibly. But I don't know what to make of this. This This is not a Venn diagram. I don't know what is being. A is strong atheism. What? Okay, but are you labeling the circle that? The circle is what we're talking. We're talking about the set here. And B is theism. Well, but then what's the circle for atheism, for strong atheism? If this is the circle for strong atheism, I don't even know how to address this. I'm sorry. This is so bad. I swear to God, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I don't even know where to begin with this. I can't even give a principle of charity. Is A is in C or C in... I don't know. That's the problem, Chris. I don't know what the set is. Using a vernacular, A is atheism, C is agnostic. In other words, not theism. Maybe? But he says, in this model, there's no such thing as weak theism. But there is logically weak theism. Not B, not P. There's somebody who doesn't believe that God does not exist. You can't just throw that out. You can't just say that that logical position doesn't exist. I show that in my Venn diagram, of course, it exists. Look again on the actual Venn that we use. This is the Venn diagram I use for my work. It's all predicated on this, really. The position not BP is weak. It's right here. The position not BP, weak atheist. The position not B, not P, weak theist. They're coextensive with each other. If one exists, the other must exist. It's a logical negation of each other, right? Well, I was going to say it's a direct logical negation, but it's a logical negation of the strong. So, oh, this hurts so bad. It really hurts. All right. The 5 states of theistic belief, there are only 3 belief states. Well, yeah, there's believe, disbelieve, and suspension of judgment. Whereas in the 5-state theistic belief model, there are 5 belief states. What? What 5 belief states? What are you talking about? There are only 3 rational epistemic dispositions. Believe P, disbelieve P, or suspend judgment on P. There's a 4th one, which is irrational, which is believe both. Where do you get 5 from? What's the 5th epistemic disposition here? Therefore, rather than having semantic collapse in the 5-state theistic belief model, which I have no comprehension of, we have semantic expansion making spirit model. This is incoherent. Steve did also include agnosticism. However, its inclusion does not seem necessary for the proofs, as agnosticism is often defined in regard to knowledge rather than belief. Well, no, not in this regard. Now, agnosticism is the state of being undecided. Agnosticism is the psychological state of not having a position. It has nothing to do with knowledge in this. You're doing what's called equivocation fallacy. It has nothing to. It is often defined in knowledge in a different domain of discourse, but we're not in that domain of discourse. We're in ontological domain of discourse. We're on dosastic domain of discourse. So in this domain, the word agnosticism refers to somebody who has the psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition, where they do not hold the proposition true and they do not hold the proposition false. Where agnostics admit a lack of knowledge and Gnostics assert a certain level of knowledge. No, again, this is completely wrong. Gnostics have nothing to do with that. Gnostics is somebody who has a very specific type of knowledge, a divine hidden knowledge. I wish atheists would get their shit together and freaking read a book or something. Because nowhere I've ever seen in the literature Gnostic being used the way they use it. Nowhere, nothing, nada. The only uses of Gnostics I have seen is in reference to Gnosticism, which is a very specific type of divine or secret or hidden knowledge. It is not referring to epistemic knowledge. It is not referring to tacit knowledge. It's not referring to explicit knowledge. It's referring to a type of knowledge that they were referring to in the 2nd century. Chris is like, I'm still trying to think what the 5th belief state is. I do not know. There's only 4 belief states. 4, and one of them is irrational. Believe, not believe, believe, disbelieve, disbelieve and believe false. So believe true, believe false, believe both, believe neither. That's it. Those are only 4. There are no others. And believe both obviously is contradiction, epistemic contradiction. A Gnostic strong theist would assert they have knowledge there is no God. Okay, that's just him spewing that. I don't use those terms. But if he wants to make stuff up, that's on his paper that he can write. A Gnostic strong theist would assert they have knowledge there is a God, which implies they believe there's a God. While an agnostic strong theist would simply admit they have faith and do not know. Why is that? No. What does it mean they have faith? No. Why is it based on faith? You can have a rational position based upon evidence to believe something. What are you being agnostic about here? A strong atheist could say, hey, look, I believe there are no gods, and I don't base it on faith. I base it upon evidence and reason and logic. You are setting back atheism here by saying that a strong atheist would admit they have it on faith. That's nonsense. That's absolutely nonsense. An atheist who says there are no gods, it's perfectly reasonable to justify it if they know what they're doing. You know, if they say, look, there are no gods because gods haven't been proven, that's not reasonable. That's unjustified because that's a fallacy. That's called the argumentum ad ignorantium. But if I say there are no gods and I base that belief on Oppie's work and Mackey's work, and I base it on arguing against theoretical virtues, and I argue, for materialism, I argue for simplicity, I argue for against the existence of God because of the evidential and logical problem of evil and divine hiddenness, all those other things, and you talk about Bayesian analysis, there's a lot of ways you can justify the belief that there are no gods. It doesn't entail that there's a lack of belief. It's merely because, it doesn't entail that you believe something merely on faith, right? You don't have to have knowledge of that to have a belief, right? No, an atheist doesn't. This is what I would suspect a theist would say. This is back in the day. Many of you guys may remember somebody named Shock of God, who would argue atheists are not justified in that position because they can't prove atheism. Hi Sarah, how are you? So this is I think sending back atheism. This is just wrong. However, Steve defines agnosticism as a lack of belief in either direction, which is not how just I define it. That's how it is defined in the academic literature. Agnosticism is the position where you do not have a position either way. You lack a belief in either direction, right? So he makes it sound like it's just me defining it that way. No, that's standard in academia. Yeah, Sarah, that Frank Turek uses that as well. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, right? Exactly. Which is nonsense. And by the way, we all know Frank Turek is dishonest, right? So that kind of negative rhetoric I despise from a theist as much as I would from an atheist spewing this nonsense here. In Steve's model, we have agnosticism meaning true epistemic neutrality. Oh, okay, I'm gonna weird wording, but okay. While usually it has nothing to do with what we believe, but rather why. No, that's bullshit. Dude, agnosticism is a psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition, where a proposition you do not hold it true and not hold it false. That's standard in philosophy when we're talking about the existence of God. Okay, go read Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Go read Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Go read Encyclopedia Britannica even. So we're not talking about knowledge. Matter of fact, what really bothers me when people try to refute my work is that I don't believe in my paper I even mentioned the word no knowledge once. Do I? Is there anywhere in my paper where I even mentioned the word no or knowledge? Because I don't think that I do. And if I do, it's certainly not in the epistemological sense. But I don't think that I do. Can somebody who's have more time go look at my paper and do a word search, see if you find the word no or knowledge in it? Preflex says the modern term Gnostic is based upon the Greek nostos, or gnosis. The ancient Greek nostos referred to a special private knowledge of the gods, particularly the type that would save them. Exactly. That is exactly 100% correct. That is exactly what I've learned about the word as well. That it was given to mean the existence of special or hidden or divine knowledge of divinity that allowed one to become one with the gods, right? Or save them, as you put out, but it's become oneness with them. Huxley, however, did not use gnosis. He used nous. Gnos. And what he meant to use it for was the illusion of having knowledge, because he felt that theists and atheists were not justified to make claims, whether it be dostastic nor of knowledge claims. He thought that he thought that one could not say and justify, I believe there's a God or I believe there's no gods rationally. That's what Russell felt. So he used the word nous as the root for agnosticism to say that people felt they had illusion of having knowledge that they don't have. But yes, perfect. You are spot on. So why don't more atheists realize that? Because they keep on using gnosis just to mean knowledge, like in knowledge in general or epistemic knowledge. And it's not what it meant. It never meant that. It never represented that. Gnosis has nothing to do with epistemological knowledge. Sadie says, I hope you all settled in nicely at the new house. And I am. Oh my God, yes. I am so comfortable here. It's unreal. I love my roomie. She has family. I feel like I'm back home. I feel like I'm just, yeah. And if Keno happens to be listening to this at work, hi Keno, wishing you and your shift a happy shift, I guess. But yes, I'm very, very happy here. Can you tell? I mean, seriously, like as opposed to where it was in Long Beach and the crap that was going down and dealing with bullshit on the internet. Yeah, I was miserable. I mean, I was depressed. That's almost 100% gone away for the most part. I have anything left over is residual and it's just normal stuff, but it's so much better. All right, so yeah, he's just wrong about that. Note, after further discussion with Steve, it seems that the confusion is that he finds weak atheists. Oh, this is new. I don't think I saw this before. Yeah, this wasn't in here before. Let's read this. Yes, Sadie Marie, I love you and I appreciate all that you've done in support for the channel. And go have some Scotch eggs for me. I want to try Scott's eggs. Go have some for me and tell me how good they are. Atheists use agnostic and Gnostic as adjective, not noun. Yeah, and even then they get it wrong, right? Even then it doesn't even work. I mean, and here's the thing, though. If somebody wanted to devise a framework where they have stipulative usages for that, there's nothing wrong with that. They can do that. I'm not against that, Halando. That's the problem. I wouldn't use it myself because it just muddies the water. But I've yet to have an atheist sit down and write a blog or do something logically that shows a coherent system. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but I think I've demonstrated that any system just boils down to atheism, theism like we have it, right? Because we're not talking about knowledge, so who the hell cares? Every system that uses those types of vernacular just boils down to, I believe God exists, or I believe that God does not exist, or I believe neither. That's it. Every system does. Jamie Russell for $2. Tried. Is that what it said? Thank you. Tried. Thank you, Jamie Russell. Yeah. No, hey, I got to give this guy credit here. This Daniel Goleman. Look, he says he's a polymath and Ronin scholar. So he's a polymath, but he gets all this wrong. So I don't think his expertise is in epistemology by any means. I know what his expertise is in. And he's probably pretty good at what he does. But not to give, well, I don't think he would care. He put it on Twitter. Yeah, he does like geology stuff and paleontology stuff and certain ancient stuff that he finds in the ground kind of stuff, which is really cool, really cool. But that has nothing to do with epistemology. So he may be a polymath, but this is not an area that I think he's well versed in. So, but anyways, he says after. By the way, I'm not saying that I am either. By the way, so. Note, after further discussion with Steve, it seems that the confusion is that he defines weak atheism as a subset of strong that when showing semantic collapse. No, I define strong atheism as a subset of weak. This is very confusing to me. Look on my Venn diagram once again. What is being a subset here, Daniel? If you look here, right? If you look here, strong... This circle, everything inside this circle is a subset of this green area here, right? This green area here is defined as weak atheist. So inside that circle are strong atheists, meaning that all strong are weak logically, because it entails the weakness, but the lactheist wants to sit here. The lactheist wants to sit in the weak position, which really just makes it an agnostic, but whatever. But where in my Venn diagram does he get the idea that I'm just finding weak atheism as a subset of strong? I'm not. I am showing that strong atheism is a subset of weak. He's got it backwards. Yeah, he straight up got it backwards. You're right. I mean, you can see this. You can literally see in the diagram. This circle is smaller than this circle, which means that this is called a nested hierarchy. That this is smaller than this circle. So this has to be a subset, and a proper subset even. Does anybody know what a proper subset is besides Preflect? Because I know he does. What's a proper? This is small quiz time. What's a proper subset? Scotch eggs are so. Yeah, I want to try Scotch eggs. They look amazing. Oh, I want to try them one of these days. I swear to God, I promise you, I will do my best before I die to have Scotch eggs. And hopefully that won't be very, I know a lot of people hope that's quick, but still got a few ways. I got a little ways to go, hopefully. Although I do have to go for some testing, but nothing seems to be the case. But I just had a phone call from Riverside Medical. I got to go in for a colonoscopy. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I didn't know you have to watch it. You have to watch a video before you go in for colonoscopy. You guys know that? I didn't know that. What kind of video do you got to watch for colonoscopy? That's But what I'm not looking forward to is the prep work. I've had 4 liters, I think it was, of polyethylene glycol one time. Oh, that's miserable. It cleans it out though. But yeah, I got to go in for colonoscopy, and there are some possible issues, but hopefully it's no big deal. I'm not going to be a worrywart, right? I want to survive and live just to piss off the people that think about me 24 hours a day, because I don't think about them at all, and I like that. That's after further discussion with Steve, it still gets it wrong. That's funny. Thank you, Chris. That is really funny, actually. That is very true. So, after further discussion with Steven, he still gets it wrong. Church of Entropy, how you doing, man? Been a while. I'm confused. It is the debate about whether the atheism is a true dichotomy. Well, sort of, but we already know it's not. Perfect says, someone has to not believe in gods before they can believe that gods are not. If Steve had gotten that wrong, I feel confident that someone would have pointed that out. Well, I mean, I think I know a lot of people that know logic very well, as you know. A lot of people that know logic very well. We know a lot of the same experts. They haven't found any issues with it. So I think somebody would have pointed out by now if there was. April for 5 more says, "If you die, I will kill you." I appreciate that. No, I'm sticking around. I got some time left, but I do got to keep healthy, and I got to go to take care of certain things. As you guys know, my brother did die of colon cancer that had metastasized, but that was a long time ago. But colon cancer does run in my family. I'm not trying to do a cancer scare or nothing like that, but I want to remain healthy, so I have some symptoms I just need to take care of, and so I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go colonoscopy. I'm sure it's probably like what's called polyps, which are harmless and benign, and they usually go in and they take those things out, during the procedure. But I think there's different procedures where they just go in and they get checked for them. But I thought that they go in and if they found a polyp, they can remove it there, right? But those are non-cancerous. Those are just annoying, So, all right. Stupid Horror Energy says it's whether atheism or a lack of belief or positive claim. Yeah, well, it's actually it's more if atheism is not a positive claim, then this is what happens. But anyways, let's go more into this. So he's wrong about this, right? Because that's completely wrong. However, as indicated by this Venn diagram, I define weak atheism as all atheism that is not strong atheism. Does not believe there's a God and does not believe there isn't a God, which is called agnostic. But doing so is shoehorning the problem. We generally define strong and weak atheism as being mutually exclusive subset of atheism. No, we don't. No. Which together create the whole. No. All strong atheists are weak atheists, logically speaking. They're not mutually exclusive subsets of atheism. They're nested. I don't know. Again, I really, by the way, this is a Euler diagram, not a Venn diagram, but I don't like this particular diagram. This is based on George Smith's work, Dr. George Smith. I don't like it. It's weird, this diagram. It's from Wikipedia, but I don't care for it because it's confusing. It's saying that strong atheists here are a subset of explicit atheists, but explicit atheism is strong atheism. I don't know the differentiation between explicit atheism and strong atheism. They're the same position in philosophy. I never liked this page on Wikipedia, by the way. When you go to this page and it talks about Smith's work, I don't particularly care for it. I find it to be vague and incoherent to me. But I don't know what this means by what's the differentiation between strong atheism and explicit atheism. And how is that a subset of implicit? Again, using a Euler diagram is not the same as using a Venn diagram, although they're similar. So I still don't know how he thinks he's refuted anything. Further reading. Stephen McCrae's original paper is incredibly detailed in its logical analysis, so I see no issue with the logic itself. Thank you. It's merely that Steve asserts without justification. I don't know what that means. And against justification, that it's absurd for a person to be an atheist and a theist simultaneously. It's still worth the read. Well, it's just absurd because, again, linguistically, we don't go around saying I'm both an atheist and a theist, but I'm defining atheism and theism in the weak case. But that's what it leads to. But at least he acknowledges the logic's right, if he understands the logic, which, again, I'm not quite sure he does based upon this. This is just, and this is incoherent. I'm not trying to be mean, but seriously, are these Venn diagrams just what? Then he goes and said, there are many other reasons why atheism should not be shoehorned into being belief that God or gods. Well, what are they? It creates numerous social issues. What? I don't know what that means. What social issues? And not shoehorning. That's how it's actually thought of in philosophy. By the way, let me pull this up real quick. There's a lot of pages on Wiki that just some of them are just weird, you know. So this is one of the papers or one of the pages on Wikipedia. This is where that diagram comes from. I know this because I've read it enough times. It comes from that one and this right here on negative and positive atheism. So it has both of these, right? It's the same diagram and it's the same legend, right? It's just one was called implicit, the other's called negative, the other's called explicit or positive, right? But implicit and explicit is what George Smith used in his book, The Case Against God, which was 1974. Which I'm not a fan of. I didn't think it was a good book. Yes, I've read it years ago. But if you look at the variety that it says here, let me blow this up so you can see it. Some varieties of atheism. On the right, explicit, positive, strong, hard atheists assert that at least one deity exists. Is false. Okay. So all these under here assert that it's false. On the right, negative, assert that at least one deity exists necessarily is false without asserting the above. So this is all a subset of this over here. Okay, sure. Which includes agnostics, right? It subsumes agnosticism, which again is one reason to reject this schema because it rejects the middle position, which it is a middle position. Sorry, Matt, you're wrong. We do not believe. I'll have a whole different video I was going to get into later. I was going to let you guys know about who do not believe or do not know whether deities exist, and who are not explicitly rejected or eschewed such a belief. But why are we talking? But again, infants or babies are innocent. But what is the strong here? Again, what is the? It's not telling me what strong is here. This is why I've always hated this. Can somebody tell me what this is? This is a really poorly written Wikipedia entry. And same thing with the Gnostic and agnostic atheist. Very poorly written. Because this is just, it's not telling me what strong is. It's saying everything over here, it lumps them all together, right? Right? It says everything on the right, explicit, positive, strong, hard. But then it has this purple area here. And the purple area says explicit strong asserts that at least one deity is false. Okay. Explicit On right, it asserts that at least one deity exists without asserting the above. What does that mean? Someone help me with this. I never could understand this. I really couldn't. I've looked at this page numerous times, obviously, because, again, negative atheism, positive atheism are terms that Anthony Flew used. Implicit and explicit are used by Smith. And by the way, this was actually, I think he first used this in 1974, it was 1972, actually. And Smith used it in 1974. And then Michael Martin started using it in the 1990s. By the way, all these three people are dead, by the way, so I can't ask them. George died not too long ago, actually. But I don't understand what they mean, the difference here. Explicit, positive. Atheists assert that at least one deity is false, right? So that's what it's saying over here. Everything over here is that at least one deity is false. And then it says, oh, excuse me, in the purple area, someone smarter than me is going to have to read this, because this, like I said, it's never made a sense to me. Because if you read this right here, I know it's really small. Let me see if I can blow it up. It's saying that everything on the right, here we go. On right, explicit, positive, strong, hard, purple. Atheists assert that at least one deity is false. Okay, that's fine. But then it says on right, blue, assert that at least one deity exists is false without asserting the above. Okay. But they're asserting that it's false, so they're asserting what's above it. This hurts my head. This hurts my head. It really does. And same thing, they have it here too. This is really, really poorly written, I think. Yeah, I think both these pages are poorly written myself, and I've never had anybody explain to me where it works. But also, they, like I said, includes agnostics, which means that you've eliminated the middle position, which again does exist. Matter of fact, there's a thread that's been going on with Matt Dillahunty, and this is for my next video, so because I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me see if I can find it here. We pull up the image, because I took a screenshot of it. So the next video I'm going to do is probably tomorrow, and the topic is going to be this, I think. So one sec. Where is this? Where did I put it? Come on. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? Shoot. I know I have it. I'll find it. No. Oh, well. I can't find it right now, but it's basically Matt Dillahunty doubling down that there's only atheism and theism, that agnostic deals with knowledge. The same nonsense that we've already refuted with him a million times, but he has a big thread going on Twitter going on with it. And I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to include this video here. I'm going to pull up in a second. This video here is something that somebody wanted me to review a phone call with Matt Dillahunty and Paula Gia. The guy, I can't remember the guy's name that called in, Clarence or something. Clarence was wrong, and it's, the guy that wrote me this was like, "Oh, Matt's kind of wrong on this," and I'm like, actually, yeah, it's iffy. Clarence, the guy that called in, is wrong. Matt is correct by pointing out the mistake that the caller made. Okay, so I know that you always want me to point out Matt's issues, and you want me to point out when Matt makes a mistake, but that I also give him credit when he didn't make a mistake, right? So this video that I'm going to be playing tomorrow, this little clip, the caller was wrong, but at the same token, Matt made some errors as well. At least as far as confusing certain things. I think there's a confusion going on. I see the confusion. But the caller was definitely wrong with not understanding that you either believe something or you don't believe something, right? And if you're unaware of something, you don't believe. And this is what the caller was trying to relate to Matt, that if you're innocent, you don't believe. And you don't believe because you're unaware of the proposition, right? You can't believe something if you're unaware of the proposition. You're innocent toward it. So all those people that are innocent are unaware of the proposition. Right? So you can't say something believes something if they don't know of what the proposition is. They don't hold the belief. Right? So if I say, hey, like Matt writes, I'll give you a little synopsis. Matt says, hey, I have a proposition here that I wrote down. Do you believe it or you don't believe it? Well, you don't know what the proposition is. You're unaware of the proposition. But the problem with the Matt's usages here is that there's a difference between not knowing what proposition he wrote down and being unaware of the proposition itself. There's a difference there. I think his analogy fails because somebody might actually know what the proposition is, but not what he wrote down. So I might have an actual stance on it. If he wrote down the proposition, X equals X, and says, okay, I wrote down a proposition. Do you believe it or you don't believe it? Well, I don't know what you wrote down is not the same as me being innocent on the proposition that is being written down, because I'm not innocent on the proposition X equals X. I believe that X equals X, right? But like I said, I'll get more into it tomorrow, but I'll get into this and I'll get into Matt, doubling down on his whole nonsense about the null hypothesis, doubling down on, atheism, theism being the only two positions. That's wrong. Somebody has said, well, within his framework it's not. Well, then he needs to state it as such. He needs to state the way I use these terms, but in philosophy, they're not used this way, and Steve's absolutely right. But he doesn't do that. He's doubling down, saying this is how it is. And Matt's absolutely wrong on that. But I'll review this video tomorrow, because we're already way over time. All right, guys. Any other last-minute questions you got on this? Like I said, sorry these guys didn't refute my work. Sorry they butchered Venn diagrams. I left the link in the video description, so you can go check out this guy's blog, read it for yourself. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section if I made some errors, or if you think his Venn diagram makes sense, or more importantly, tell me what you think of his Venn diagram. Tell me if you think it has any validity whatsoever, because this is what confuses me. When he says that my work is valid, my logic flows, and he can't get a Venn diagram right, I'm confused about that. I want to give him credit and principle of charity to think that maybe he somehow thought that I was arguing that Venn diagram, which make no sense, because that means he just didn't get the paper right, I guess. I mean, either way, it doesn't work. Either he had a gross misunderstanding of my work, because he said that I advocated that the weak is under strong, which clearly I don't, based on my own Venn diagram. So that wasn't even a Venn. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was. So, all right. Yeah, Zeta Marie, of course. Absolutely, and I like I said, I've definitely been looking after myself. But I'll be streaming tomorrow about the same time, because I got today and tomorrow off. Yes, unless I get called in. It's been frequently, like I said. But I enjoyed this. This was fun, and I appreciate it. So, last minute question: what is the meaning of everything? 42. So my question to you is: what is the question? Yes, what is the question? The answer is 42. But what is the question? And the question is not the meaning of everything. There's a very specific question from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What is the question? Anybody remember? What is it? That looked more like. I hope not, because I don't want to get demonetized if that's what it looked like, sir. Anybody remember the question from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? They're playing Scrabble and they're picking up the pieces from the Scrabble thing. Hopefully it could be random, like stochastic, and because they if you remember correctly, they were the last humans on Earth just before the supercomputer was going to give the answer to the life, the universe, and everything, but they devised a question out of it, right? Because they got the answer from the other computer, 42, but they didn't know what the question was. Does anybody remember? If not, I'll tell you guys before I log off. But I'll just tell you guys. The question was, what was 6 by 9? The specific question was Was it what was it? What do you get by 699 by 9? Now I gotta look it up. Question for Hitchhiker. Let me look this up. I don't want to mislead you guys. It was 6 by 9, but I don't remember the exact question. Yeah. So the exact question was, what do you get when you multiply 6 by 9? Is the ultimate question of life. Close, Anasfridis. What is 6 by 9? So the ultimate question of life, the answer, is 42. But the ultimate question of life is, what do you get when you multiply 6 by 9? Yeah. Well, the computer wasn't very good, I guess, That was anticlimactic. It's Douglas Adams, man. Come on. All right, I'm gonna bugger out here, guys. This has been fun. I enjoy this. I love you guys. I appreciate all you guys, all my mods, all the supporters of the channel, all the super chats. Halando, thank you for being a member. I appreciate it. All the greens out there. Kawasa, appreciate you being a member. Any other members we got out there? April, appreciate you being a mod and super chatting. Jamie, appreciate your sticker there. And Sarah, always a pleasure. Love you. You know that. And like I said, if you guys want to become a member of the channel, get a cool green. Yes, we know that 6 by 9 is 54. It's Douglas Adams. The program sucked. the program. It was billions of years, and the program couldn't get it right. Right? The Earth was a supercomputer. You read the books. The books are great. Or go watch the series on BBC. The BBC series on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was very, 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 very faithful to the books. And those books were amazing. If you ever get bored and you just want to read some brilliant writing, go read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I cannot not recommend it enough. So, so good. Yeah. And let me put this out there too. If you would rather be a Patreon, because like I said, I am going to be doing these streams on my days off. You can become a Patreon on the channel that way. I appreciate it a lot. Patronage is a huge extra money for me. I use that for like my own personal stuff, Sarah became a new hole. Thank you, Sarah. New hole. Woo! Sarah's a new hole. What up? Wait, what happened to your old holes? Oh no, I'm just kidding. I can say that with Sarah because I love Sarah. Well, it's not a dirty joke. Well, yeah, it kind of is, but Sarah, people are gonna be like saying that I'm like saying dirty jokes to you, and then I'm gonna get all this flack from freaking trolls forever now. See that? Goodbye. It's so long, and thanks for all the fish. Let's see here. She's like, I'm a hoe. You're our hoe, though. Yes. You're our hoe, and you're the best. Sarah has been around, oh my god, I can't even, 7 years, probably, give or take, something like that. Yeah, so. Alright, but I do gotta wrap this up. I am fading. I just miss you guys. I know I've been working a lot, so I'm trying to prolong this as much as possible, because I'm not streaming as much, but I am streaming on my days off and the nights I get home early and things of that nature. So don't think that I stopped. I haven't. I'm still doing my thing as ever. But I just miss you guys. But I will be doing a stream tomorrow on the Matt Dillahunty thing and his latest nonsense. Yeah, you're old. Yeah. Used to be young and vibrant, and nope, now you're just antiquated like a fine wine. But you know what? She's gotten better, so. I am going to end the stream, though, because I get tired. I'm just spewing shit now. Good night, all. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. But yeah, I really am going to look forward to the comments in this particular video, because I want you guys to tell me if you guys doubt any of these refutations were even close to refuting my paper. Any of them, So, good night.